Today we're going to take a look at how to create an event feed. So right now when we pick up the AR or the weapons or anything from the ground, it doesn't really tell the player or notify the player what exactly did they pick up and how much did they pick up. So I want to create an event feed where it states whenever I pick up a weapon or an item, it should say picked up and the name of the item, and also it should say how many of that item did I just pick up. To build this, we're going to go to our UI folder and then create a new user interface, and this will be our widget blueprint. User widget. And this would be w underscore event feed underscore line. Open this up and we're going to create a size box. And the size box, I'm going to set this to desired on screen and then do a width and a height override. The height, let's make it something like 50. And the width, we're going to make it something like maybe 300. And again, we can edit this later on, make it bigger or smaller as we see fit. And inside of this, I want to add in a horizontal box. And this horizontal box is going to house two things. First one is an image. This will be the image of the actual item itself. I think it'll look nice if the player gets to see the image. And the next is going to be a text box. So let's go ahead and add that to the horizontal box as well. Let's select the image and then let's make sure that the image is centered. And our text box, let's make sure that this is centered as well. And then also centered in this justification. And let's make the size something like 12. Oh, actually, we'll do 18. Let's select the image and then let's name this as icon and then make sure it's set to variable and then select the text box. And then we're going to name this as icon underscore txt and set this to a variable as well. Now let's test to see how this image would look like. So back in our weapon system where we have our imports, I'm going to set the brush to the AR4 image that we have. So it's going to automatically get oversized because our default size of the AR4, if you select this image size, it's 616 by 300. So we can actually manually set this to 32 by 32 to see how this will look on screen. And again, we can try to make this like, let's say 64 by 64. That actually looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and compile. And we're going to set it inside in the coding as 64 by 64 because when you add in new images, they're all going to come with different sizing. So we want to control that sizing through the code, and we don't want the image to determine the size. So now that we have the feed itself set up, let's go into our graph, and we need to create a couple different variables. The first one is going to be the name, and let's set this to name and then instance editable and expose on spawn. Next is our portrait, and this would be of type texture 2D. And let's make sure this is instance editable and expose on spawn. And next is going to be our quantity. And this would be of type integer. And again, instance editable and expose on spawn. Compile. And we're going to work off of pre-construct here for now. So first thing I'm going to do is set up the icon. So let me drag in the icon here, get icon. Off of this icon, I'm going to go ahead and say set brush. And we need to select this structure. And this will give us the actual brush and all of its settings. So drag off of this brush over here, and we're going to do a make slate brush. Let's move this out of the way here and expand it. And now we have the image size that we can edit. So drag the image size and then do a make vector 2D. And we're going to set this to 64 by 64. So now this will cap the image regardless of what image you add in. It's going to automatically size it to 64 by 64. And this image asset, we're going to select this icon and then we're going to plug it in here. And the last thing that we're going to do is drag off of this icon and we're going to say set brush from texture. And connect this to the brush and connect the portrait in here as such. And connect the event pre-construct to this set. Next, we're going to drag our icon text. And then this, we're going to go ahead and say set text. And just make sure you select the one that says set text with the bracket. And the text, we just don't want to plug in the name. We want to actually format this text. So let's drag this down, and then we're going to do a format. And inside of this format, I always, every time the player picks up something, I always want it to say picked up. and then followed by the name of the item, and then followed by how many did they pick up. So right now, I don't want to manually type in the name every single time. So I can actually make the name a variable inside of this format text. To do that, I will just hold down, I would actually add in these two parentheses, which is also the squiggly bracket. And inside of this, I can actually give it a variable name. So that would be actually name. And then I'll get a variable here. Here, I can actually drag and plug this name variable in there. And this will, every time this feed gets generated, this name information will be automatically added to my text. So it'll say picked up a can of food, picked up an AR4 or whatever. And then I also wanted to say the quantity. So I'm going to do a space here, and then I'm going to do X. X is like, times whatever the quantity is. So again, squiggly line, and inside of it, I'm going to add in quantity. And that will give me my other variable for quantity. And I can now plug in the quantity here, just like so. Now let's go ahead and add this to our backpack. So in our content drawer, let's go to our core folder, backpack system, BPC backpack. I'm going to create a new function to handle this, and this will be handle pickup feed. Compile. And the pickup feed needs a couple input. First input that it requires is the name. And this would be of type name. Next input that it would require is the type, e underscore slot types, and that would be the type. And next we want the two structures. So this would be the weapon info, and that would be of type S weapon info. And after that, we have our item info. And again, this would be of type item info. So here's the logic that I want to follow. Whenever we pick up an item, it should say picked up AR4, and then it should say ×1. But if I pick up a second AR4, it shouldn't create a secondary line. It should take the existing line and then just update the quantity. It should, instead of creating a secondary line saying picked up AR4 ×1 several times, it should say picked up AR4 ×2, ×3, ×4. And for that, we need some sort of a, I guess, some cache memory, like a temporary holder to hold how many items did we pick up for a very short period of time. So the best way to do that is using a map. So I'm going to create a new variable here, and this would be pickup count, make this of type name, and then make this a map type, and then the value of it is going to be integer. So this map is going to hold what is the name of the item and how many do we have. And again, this is only for temporary, only when the feed is active. As soon as the feed disappears from our screen, we want to reset this map, or we want to get rid of that item from our map. So I'm going to first drag this map in here, and I'm going to do a get, and I'm going to go and do a find. What this find node does is, and I'm going to give it the input of name. So it's going to go through this pickup count, and it's going to see if this name exists in our pickup count. And it will give me a Boolean value and also the actual value of that name if it does exist. I'm going to put in a branch here and then connect this as such. And then also the Boolean here from the find connected to the condition. Now, first thing, the easiest thing that we want to do is the false. If the item does not exist, what do you want to do? Well, I want to go ahead and add that to my pickup count so my pickup count can temporarily hold on to it. So I'm going to get the pickup count and then do an add. Connect this to the false. I'm always going to be only adding one at a time. So I'm going to set this to 1. Again, in your game, if you want to give the player like 10 wood or 10 fiber, then you would just need to create a variable and then input that here. During handle pickup, you just need to give them a quantity and then connect the quantity here as to how many they're picking up. Because in our game, they're going to be picking up one at a time. I'm going to set this to 1. And then we need to give it the name, which would be the name of this item right here. So I'm going to say get name, and all the way at the bottom, I should have my variable here, get name. So now it adds it and holds it in this inventory for now. And now off of this, we're going to go ahead and say create widget. And this is going to be our event feed line. Immediately, I get the name, the portrait, and the quantity I get to add. So I'm going to go ahead and this weapons info that we have in our input, I'm going to say right click and say get weapon info. I should have it here. Drag off of this and break this variable, and then plug the name into the name, the portrait into the portrait. And remember, we said we're only adding one quantity, so I'm going to set this quantity to 1. This I'm going to go ahead and add to viewport. And again, this is a function, so I'm just going to do a return node here. Very simple, just like this. And this handle pickup feed, we need to add it to our weapon. So because we're testing it with our weapons. So if I open up the add to backpack weapon function, where we have the return node success, only when we are able to pick up the weapon, we want to show it in the feed, right? We don't want to just show it in the feed if we cannot. So here I'm going to drag and drop this handle feed. The type is going to be a weapon. Let me move this out a little bit. So now let's go ahead and test this in game. If I press play, I go over to the item. And if I press F, on the left side, I see it says picked up AR41 and the image size didn't get skewed too much. It actually looks pretty good. And if I press F again, nothing really happens because now the item actually exists in our pickup count. So the true is firing, but we don't really have anything in true. That's why when you pick up F on the item again, nothing really happens. So let's go ahead and define this true line. To prevent any type of failure, I'm going to drag off of this true. And then I'm going to say get all widgets of class. And that would be our event feed line. And I'm going to check if this is empty. So you can actually search to see if this is empty. The reason why we're checking for if it is empty is very simple. If the widget is empty, if there's no event feed line existing, then we need to go ahead and create a new event feed. If the event feed already exists, that means it's not empty, then we need to go ahead and add to that existing feed, right? So instead of saying x1 or times 1, now it needs to say times 2, times 3, and so on and so forth. So now we're going to do a branch here and connect this as such. Now, if our widget event feed line is empty, that means there's no feed in our screen, then off of our true, we need to go ahead and do the same thing here. We'll just copy this entire thing, and then we'll just paste it up here. I need to copy this weapons info, put it up here, and connect the name here, and then connect the portrait. One thing I'm going to do is select this weapons info and hide unconnected pins just to make it nice and small. And again, same thing here. I'm going to just hide unconnected pins. If the feed is empty, then we're going to go ahead and create a new line. That means the feed for pickup AR4 showed up once and it disappeared. And then now we're going to create a new one. Now for the false portion. Now, if this event already exists, then we want to take the quantity of the event or quantity of the item in that line feed, and we want to just add 1 to it. We want to implement the interfaces in here to actually communicate to the widget that is already existing rather than having to cast to that widget. So I'm going to go back to my content drawer, into my interface folder, create a new interface, blueprint interface, and this will be for BPI_UI. So all of our UI interface communications, we're going to use it. We're going to do it through this interface. Let's go ahead and open it up, compile. And the new function, we're going to name this to set feed line quantity. This is going to take an input, and this would be quantity and integer. Compile and save. Back in our backpack. So now off of false, first we want to go ahead and update this pickup count. So let's go ahead and get the pickup count, and we're going to do an add. Set this to false. And the name of it is going to be the name. So we can say get name. And the quantity is going to be +1. And here we're going to go ahead and get all widgets with the interface. This would be the BPI_UI interface. And the found widgets, if you were to go and search for get feed, set feed, or anything, it's not going to it's not going to work. Like I mentioned in many other videos, the shortcut is to get the player character and then get the actual interface function through the character, and then delete the character, and then now connect this to our array here. And this works exactly the same. And the feed quantity, we want to now get our pickup count and then do a find to see what is our existing quantity. And this would be get name. And we're going to drag this and then just add 1. And then that would be our feed line quantity. Now we need to implement this interface in our widget. So let's go ahead and do that. So in our event feed line, go to our class settings and implemented interfaces. We're going to go ahead and search for BPI UI, compile and save. And now in our interfaces, we have the set feed line quantity. We're going to go ahead and implement this event. Let's move this construct below. Yeah, let's do this. And then let's drag our quantity, and then we're going to go ahead and do a set, and then connect this here as such. And right after this, we want to now go ahead and then set our text. So just like this right here. And again, if you don't like this extra line that is going up, you could always just copy and paste this down here. The reason why I'm going to do this here is because once the feed shows up, I'm going to set up a timer, and the timer is going to be going off of this. So I'm just going to create this one code that will handle it whenever we reset our quantity or when we build our quantity. It's going to have this one reset timer function. So let's do the reset timer function as well. So let's drag off of this set text, and then we're going to do set timer by event. And this event, let's drag off of it and let's create a custom event. And this would be named destroy event feed line. Now, I don't want to go, I do want to go ahead and do remove from parent here, but at the same time, before I go ahead and destroy this feed line, I also want to send in a message to remove that item from our pickup count, because this pickup count is very temporary. Remember, like I mentioned, this pickup count is very temporary, and we only want to hold the items in this pickup count if it is on the screen. If it is not on the screen, then we want to get rid of it. So back in our BPI UI, we're going to add in a new function, and this would be reset feed line. And this is going to have a name input. Compile. Back in our event feed line, we won't be able to communicate directly to the component, the backpack component, because if I say things like get component with interface, it's not really going to get me that function. So we need to communicate this to the player, and the player will then communicate it to the backpack component. So we're going to do a get player character. And here we're going to go ahead and say reset feed line, and then now connect this off of destroy, and then connect the name here as such. And then back in our third person character, let's go to our third person character. Let's go ahead and implement that UI interface. So go to my class settings, implemented interfaces. I'm going to go ahead and add in the BPI underscore UI. Just like that. And then here where we have the reset feed line, I'm going to right click and implement this event. And in my I'm going to drag in my backpack, but my backpack doesn't really have a reset event. So let's go ahead and create that. In our function, I'm going to create a reset feed function. And the input for this is going to be name. And this function is very simple. We're going to drag our pickup count, and we're going to go ahead and see if this name exists in our pickup count. If it does, let's do a branch and connect this execution pin like this. If it does exist in our pickup count, then we want to drag our pickup count again, and then we're going to say remove. Connect this off of true. And we need to plug in the name here. So let's go ahead and do name. And then we're going to do a return feed. And then we can connect this Boolean into the return feed. Feed remove. There you go. And we can use this later on for other functions when we need it. So this is basically just tells us, yes, the feed got removed or it didn't get removed. That's all it's going to say, that true or false. So now back in our third person character, off of our backpack, we can now say reset feed and connect the name in here. Let's go ahead and test this. In game, if I press F, I should say picked up AR4 1. After 3 seconds or so, it should disappear. And if I press F again, it's going to say 1. Now, if I press F one more time, it should say picked up AR4 times 2. And then if I press F again, oh, it should say 3, but it's not counting. Let's go and see what went wrong. I see the error that I've made. So in our handle pickup feed, where we're checking if the event feed is empty already, off of false, I'm manually adding just the one. I shouldn't do that. I should get the pickup count to see if that item already exists. Then I need to get the quantity that exists in our pickup count and then add one here. So let me go ahead and pull this back here with this +1, and then connect this +1 over here like so. And then I'm going to copy this pickup name defined and connect this directly into set quantity. So we shouldn't be adding one here. We should just be adding one when we add it to our pickup count array. So now if I go into the game and if I press F, I should say pickup air for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then now if I back away for a quick second, I don't need to back away, but wait for the feed to disappear. And now if I go and press F, it's going to start the count again instead of it saying 6, 7, which is not what we want. We want this to start the count again, and so on and so forth. So folks, I think that's a great stop for us. In our next video, we're going to take a look at multi-feed line item. So we're going to have more than one line item showing up for different materials that we pick up. So I think that'll be an exciting one to show you as well. Thank you very much for stopping by today's video, and I'll catch you on the next one.